Hey, counseling students, welcome to chapter 5. This is one of the chapters that I really like because it has to deal with questions and looking at open and closed types of questions and communication. All right, so you are going to understand the two key styles of questioning, both open and closed questions. Choose the question stem and style that are most likely to achieve a useful anticipated result that clarifies the client's story. So, for example, what questions often lead to talk about facts. So when you're asking your clients those what questions, you're really asking them to give you factual information about things that brought them into therapy or that are going on every week. Your how questions are going to relate more to their feelings or how they're going to process their emotions. And then the why questions, those are the ones I like to stay away from. I'm a very big believer in limiting how often we ask our clients why. So your why questions are to look for reasons. Your could and would questions tend to be the most open. So, tell me a situation that would lead to blank, or if you could do blank. That gets your client to really explore. I really like the what, the how, and the could and would questions. And again, the why questions, if you think in your own life, someone asks you, like, why, it's often hard to actually answer that. So I tell my clients, and I just tell people in general, if you can answer the what, that will more than likely give you the answer to the why. All right. Increase your understanding of the level of client stress shown in the interview. The book uses interview a lot. I'm not a big, um, it's basically just when you're first meeting your client and you're talking to them. You're gathering information, and it's a consistent gathering of information because you are working with your client to achieve maybe multiple goals. So the book uses interview. I'm not a big fan of that. All right. So in our goals, what we're looking for is ability to draw out and enrich client stories by bringing out a more complete description, including background information and needed details. So we're not necessarily going way back in history. Sometimes we have to visit that, but what we're looking for are just some specific details that might give us more information to, go through and lead them into a positive direction. All right, ability to encourage and support client intentionality according to the individual needs of the client, ability to balance discussion of clients' concerns in a more constructive manner using the positive asset search, strength emphasis, positive psychology, and wellness. These are all things that you're learning throughout the term. Ability to engage in a 15-minute session using questions as your primary skill. Completing this successfully also demonstrates empathy and the ability to listen. And then the ability to use questions in a culturally sensitive and respectful way. All right, this is a case of Jose. This is something you will complete on your own. You can pause and read this, but this is something that you will address. All right, the value of questions, systematic framework for directing the interview, open new areas for discussion, pinpoint and clarify issues, and aid in self-exploration. So when we look at what value are in questions, right? We ask questions so that we can have some direction. We ask questions so that opens us up for new discussion. We ask questions so that we can, just kind of like it says, pinpoint. So when you said this, and then, continue with your conversation, it's all about questioning, listening. You are really doing a lot as the therapist at once. And then, of course, aid in self exploration. So the questions help us aid, help. It helps us help our client aid in their self exploration. And even through their self exploration, we're also doing the same thing. All right, so when we look at open questions, those cannot be answered in a few words. So your open is a lot of dialogue. Your closed are very specific. Sometimes it's just a few words. Maybe it's just one. So open is multiple words, sentences, dialogue. Facilitate deeper exploration of their issues. Typically begin with what, how. I'm going to drop the why. That's in the book. Could or would. Again, we want to really be delicate when we're asking the why questions. And then the closed enable you to obtain specifics and can be answered in a few words. Those often begin with is, are, or do. So, is there something you want to talk about? Yes, right. Okay. And then we go on with that. Or are you looking to leave your job? Do you have intentions of blank? So as you say those out loud to yourself, you can see how, the open are for exploration and the closed are just you're trying to get information. All right, so let's take a little practice. All right, so your open questions often begin with who, what, when, where, or why if we have to. All right, closed questions may start with do, is, or are. Could, can, and would questions are considered open, but have the advantage of being somewhat closed, giving more power to the client who can more easily say that they don't want to respond. All right, closed questions may start with do, is, or are. All right, so now if we look at the open questions and we look at by asking these open questions, what is that anticipated client response? They are going to provide more details. They're going to talk more in response to those questions that you're asking. The could, would, and can questions are often the most open of all because they give clients the choice to respond briefly. No, I can't. And then when they say that, you'll know when you need to explore even more. Again, you don't want to say, well, why can't you? That we stay away from. So just start training yourself to ask yourself, okay, would it benefit for me to ask why? All right. And then the anticipated client response, closed questions may elicit specific information, but may close off client talk. So again, we really want to focus on open and use closed when we're really just looking for data or facts. All right. Effective questions encourage more focused client conversations with more pertinent detail and less wandering. All right, some theorists and many practitioners raise important issues around the use of questioning. They maintain that questions are best learned after expertise is developed in the reflective listening skills. That's in chapter 6 and 7. You want to make sure that when you are asking your clients questions, that you're not overdoing it. You don't want to question them to death. You don't want to ask them a bunch of questions in a row. You want to ask a question, let them explore. Open questions. Let them have that dialogue and that back and forth conversation. Then maybe ask another question. But you want to let your client do most of the talking, right? They do about 75%, 75% of the talking. You do about, 25, 30%, maybe a little less. Just depends on the session. All right. Some students or trainees will like using questions so much that they will not give enough attention to critical listening skills. That is the theme that I notice from my counseling students, is that because they are not yet well versed in their comfortability level, they tend to, in their first session, ask just a lot of rapid fire questions, and they kind of lose the momentum in their connection with their clients. So again, it's really important to, kind of space out your questioning and then let things just happen organically. All right, excessive use of questions takes the focus from the client and gives too much power to the book says interviewer, but it's the therapist. So you don't want to have so much of the power and dominate that session. Your central task in this chapter is to find your own balance in using questions in the session. All right, so clients do not always provide you with the important information, and sometimes the only way to obtain it is by asking questions. And that might be in the intake, that might be in the paperwork that you give them, where you ask them to write down, their background. That's what's called the biopsychosocial. You're asking them, what made them come into therapy, what their goals are, things like that. And they may leave a lot of detail out. They may leave family history out. They may leave things like that out. So when you look at your intake, look at what they're leaving out and let that kind of guide you into asking, maybe some historical questions, and of course, very current, up to date, what brought you here type of questions. All right, so the client's response to the open question, what important things are happening in your life right now or with your family? That's a great question because it leads to a lot of something. That might reveal that a separation or divorce is about to occur, that a job has been lost, or that some other important issue underlies the client's depression. It could be a loss of a loved one, too. Your original assessment of the client's condition as classical clinical depression may be modified by your knowledge of what is occurring in the client's life, and treatment may take a different direction. So you see a client, they come in, they seem very sad, and you might want to just, especially when you're new, you might just want to think, oh, depressed, right? But then once they start talking and you realize they're not always feeling like this, but some major life event happened, then that's going to change maybe the trajectory and the direction that you go in, and a potential diagnosis too. So they may not have depression. They may not be anxious in general. It may be that they are just going through something and they're going through an adjustment. All right. All right. Clients do not always provide you with important information. Okay, that's redundant. So the client may talk about being depressed and unable to act. Wait, I feel like I just said that one again. All right, so let me hold on. Oh, yes, just notice that. So the only thing that changes is down here. I need to change that. All right, so your original assessment of the client's condition as classical clinical depression may be modified by what is occurring in the client's life, and treatment may take a different direction. All right, I don't know why that was doubled. All right, so the first word of a question stem often, but not always, results in anticipated outcomes. So again, those first words, what, facts and information, what happened, why, discussion of reasons. And sometimes we don't know those reasons, so it's really important to know when to use the why question. So in the example, it says, why is that meaningful to you? What I challenge you to do is to change that why and think of how you can ask that, the meaningfulness, without asking why. All right, how? Exploration of the process of feeling emotion. How could that be explained? Could, can, and would. General framing or summary. Could you tell me more about your situation? Would you give me a specific example? Can you tell me what you'd like to talk about today? So again, these words will give different eliciting responses. Okay, to help the session start again and keep it moving, ask an open question on a topic the client presented earlier in the session. So it's good to go back to revisit, to get more information. So could you tell me more about that? And you're not saying, could you tell me more about that? But what it's kind of alluding to is, could you tell me more about the situation that is going on with your husband? So whatever that is what you want to put in place of. All right, how did you feel when that happened? So how did you feel when your husband said those unkind words? Okay. Given what you've said, what would be your ideal solution? So again, given what you've said about whatever, what would be your ideal solution to this situation? What might we have missed so far? So what might we have missed? What might have we have missed in our discussion of what your goals are, right? That's something. And then what else comes to your mind? So, and again, you want to tweak these, but this is just to give you kind of a baseline of just kind of a template of where to go. All right, empathy requires that you understand specifically what your client is saying. Concreteness is key in empathetic understanding. Seek specifics and avoid vague generalities. So when you're looking for your clients to explore, you want to get into specifics. You want to find, you want to hone in on what the issue is. You don't want to give these broad general statements because sometimes that's too overwhelming and then they just don't know. Counselors and therapists are interested in specific feelings, thoughts, and examples of actions. All right, examples of open questions that aim for concreteness and specifics might be, could you give me a specific example of blank? What do you mean by kind of what I was saying earlier? Communication from the counselor needs to be concrete and easy for the client to understand. Positive regard and respect for the client are essential for future growth. This is illustrated in neuroscience research. So again, every chapter is going to have some type of neuroscience attached to it because the brain body works together. All right, memories are stored in many sections of the brain. Negative emotions and feelings originate primarily in the amygdala, deep in the limbic system of the brain. Those are the two little almond-shaped pieces that are in the brain. Positive emotions are located in many areas, but the nearby nucleus accumbens sends out signals to the prefrontal cortex, enabling focus on the positive. So if you're going into neuropsychology, or if you're going in to be a neuropsychologist, you're going to need to understand more of these brain regions and how they are, how they affect different clients. As a clinician, as a therapist, counselor, you need to have a baseline knowledge of that. All right, so questions in the interview. What do you think of the meeting between Jamila and Kelly? So you're going to want to go back in the text, and that's what this is addressing. What did you learn about the use of open and closed questions? Was Jamila putting ideas into Kelly's mind? And what is the effect of using why, how, and could questions in this situation? All right, the antecedent behavior consequence. So this is the ABC framework. It provides a comprehensive picture of the client's experience. So the antecedent is the A that draws out linear sequences in a story. The B for behavior focuses on observable concrete actions. And then the C is consequence that helps the client see the result of an event. So this is just a framework, an application that you may use. This may be one of the kind of frameworks that you use in your practice. All right, questions place power with the counselor, therapist, psychologist, whatever. Questions from culturally different interviewers, counselors, therapists, may be met with distrust and only grudging answers may be given. So again, it's very important to connect with your client. Again, asking too many questions too quickly may promote distrust because they're going to feel like, I get this with some of my clients that come into me, they say, all my therapist did, or all my last counselor did, or therapist, whatever, all they did was ask me questions over and over, and I didn't feel like I got anywhere. So it's really important to really be present and not over ask. And like I said before, that rapid firing of questions, that might be perceived as grilling them, that like, and that is overwhelming. And they came to counseling to learn how to not be overwhelmed. Questions used insensitively can destroy trust. So again, you have to practice how you say and frame your questions. And then you have to honor cultural differences. And you know what? Sometimes you don't know. And so it is okay to say, hey, I don't, I don't know much about your culture. Can you please tell me some of your, whatever that is, some of your traditions, some of your, behaviors, whatever comes to your mind organically in that session, ask them. They want to provide that and they like that. It makes them feel that you're trying to connect to them and that you're a human being, even though you're a professional. All right, build trust at the client's pace. A central issue with hesitant clients is trust. Trust building and rapport needs to come first, and your own natural openness and social skills are essential. So trust is a main thing. Maybe they've seen a few therapists and they really don't know if they want to do this. Maybe they are being told they need to go to therapy. So you want to provide that space to allow them to be vulnerable. Search for concrete specifics. If your client is talking in very general terms and is hard to understand, it often helps to ask questions from the ABC pattern. All right, children may require considerable help from the therapist before they are willing to share at all. It helps children. So if you're going into the child route, child counseling, child psychology, whatever, they have something to do with their hand. You want to give them something to do with their hands. There's play therapy, there's art therapy. You can have them build something. You can have them draw something, draw their feelings, ask them to draw what they're feeling, what they're going through. That often helps a lot and helps break down their nerves. So drawing, playing with small toys, playing with a house that includes child and adult figures. There is a very great technique called house tree person. You might want to look that up. Many open questions are too broad for children to understand because, again, they are children. Phrase ABC questions empathetically and carefully. And one really good technique with children is to meet them where they're at. Maybe get on the floor with them. Then they feel like, oh, there isn't this big scary adult asking me things. All right, stress can move to trauma. It takes at least 5 positive comments to balance out one negative. Really think about that. One negative thing, right? One negative thing that you experience. You need 5 positive things to just move away from that. It is surprisingly easy to remember stressful events and even visualize the situations and the words said. These stressors over time can easily become traumatic. Repeated stressors become deeply embedded and traumatic and even destroy neurons in the brain. Stress is omnipresent, and the repeated hassle of thoughtless comments and put downs can result in permanent memories that you will encounter in your counseling practice. So, enough of negativity in a person's brain can cause neural pathways to go off and to, all the roads get and all the neurotransmitters get all just kind of like spaghetti thrown at a wall, and it's just all over the place. So it's very important to be very present and try to, through your consistency, is help reframe the way they think into a more positive manner. Positive psychology, wellness, and therapeutic lifestyle changes are central to helping clients rewrite these negative experiences. And you are going to learn all these things as you move through the course. All right, stories presented in the helping interview are often negative and full of serious and stressful challenges. Carl Rogers, who is the founder of client-centered therapy or counseling, was always able to find something positive in the client. He is considered the most beloved psychologist to ever live because, again, he was very present and he could find good in anyone. And that type of person really, they say in psychology that person doesn't really exist. He was kind of the only one and the breakthrough person for that. So especially with positive regard, it's important, especially in the beginning. You may not use that technique all throughout your counseling with someone, but especially in the beginning when you're building trust and rapport and empathy and all of that, Rogerian approach is very effective. Spend session time addressing strengths and positives, what's new and good. So you can talk about the negatives, but hey, tell me something great that happened this week. If they can't think of anything great, well, tell me something that maybe went well this week. You want to build on the good. Search out hidden strengths that have helped the person survive difficulties and trauma. You can ask them questions like, how did they get through something before? If they have re-experienced something, how did they get through that the first time? Commenting periodically on clients' abilities and drawing out stories of strength are important in and counteracting the inevitable negatives we experience daily. Our clients, it will be very easy for them to focus on the negatives. So we want to help reframe things so that the more they come in, the more positive they're being. And it's not a fake positive, it's their mindset is shifting. That's the whole point of therapy. All right, possible positive questions. Could you talk about a time when somebody helped you? May I hear a story about when something went really well for you? Can you tell me about a time when you felt relaxed or happy? I usually don't stick with the word happy. You know, can you tell me about a time when you felt relaxed or you felt a sense of joy, right? Because joy is sustainable. Happiness can be fleeting and momentary. So I like to focus on more sustainable words. What helped you feel that way? Could you describe 3 positive things that happened to you today? If they can't think of 3, ask them for 2. Ask them for even 1. You just want to get at least one thing that went well in their week. What are your best accomplishments so far? And what do they say about you? So when asking them, accomplishments so far, try to narrow it a little bit. You want to give them kind of a time frame, not just something so broad in their whole life, because that might be difficult to answer as well. All right, let's do a strength inventory. What have you done right and what strengths came out of that? So again, when you're asking them what they've done right, try to narrow that and be specific. All right, C, context. Obtain a general picture of the situation, issue, or problem. What is going on in your life? What's happened since I last saw you? What happened for you and your family during the pandemic, the fire, the protest, the earthquake, whatever, insert whatever that is. A, affect. Explore the emotional base, feeling, or emotional state. So you're looking at their kind of like their face and what they're showing. How are you feeling right now about blank? Concern, clarify the problem or issue and obtain specifics. What troubles you most now? What bothers you about that? H for handling. Identify past and potential actions and behaviors. How are you handling that? What are you doing about that? And then empathy. General reflective responses supporting a good relationship used throughout. As I hear you, that must be very difficult to deal with. So you're showing that what's called cognitive empathy, that you're thinking as you're listening and you're applying that care to them. All right, so sounds like that hurts. Bombardment and grilling. Too many questions may give too much control to you, the clinician, and may put clients on the defensive. So again, we don't want to over question. Multiple questions, another form of bombardment, throwing out too many questions at once. That's that rapid firing. That may confuse them. It also may enable clients to select which question they prefer to answer. So again, we want to be open and we want to space things out. All right, questions as statements. Some therapists or clinicians may use questions as a way to sell their own points of view. If you are going to make a statement, do not frame it as a question. Don't you think it would be helpful if you studied more versus what occurs to you as you think about improving your grades? Think about that. Think about which one sounds better. And then why questions can put clinicians on the defensive or interview your clients on the defensive and cause discomfort. Any question that evokes a sense of being attacked can cause discomfort and defensiveness. So again, I say try to leave out the why questions as much as possible. All right, so we did it under 20 minutes. So our key points in practice, we went over in this chapter: ACT, the value of questions, open and closed questions, the what else questions, promoting client elaboration, the negative approach as well as the positive approach, multiple applications of questions, and multicultural issues, and then finally ending with your portfolio of competencies and personal reflection. So I hope through this chapter there was, a lot of information in just under 30 slides. So think about the value that questions bring and being able to space out those questions. So I hope you learned and enjoyed something from this chapter, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.